In recent years, the price of toys and collectibles from the 1970s up to the mid-90s has rocketed, and this has led to a number of cheap Chinese knockoffs finding their way onto the market. Now, they're quite easy to spot, usually through the wording, through either mistranslation or maybe someone who doesn't really speak English has heard a word and they're trying to guess the correct one. To illustrate what I mean, the reverse happened in the early 1980s when the Mitsubishi car company wanted to launch a new sports coupe for the American market. Now, they'd realised that Americans will buy cars if they're associated with horses, Mustang, Charger, Bronco, etc. And they'd already had some success with the Mitsubishi Colt. So the new car was going to be called the Stallion. However, the decision was made that all of the advertising, marketing and brochures would be carried out by an American company. Now that made sense, because they'd know what language to use to sell the car, and of course their printing presses would be set up in English. But these are the days before the internet, so all the information was relayed by telephone. And no one factored in how a Japanese person would say stallion. So the person on the phone in America wrote down what they thought they had heard. And the mistake wasn't noticed until after all the brochures had been printed. So Mitsubishi had to rename their car. Not the Stallion, the Mitsubishi Starion. So let's have a look at our first knockoff collectible. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Special Man. Now that's got to be a mistranslation because super and special sort of mean the same thing. But Special Man doesn't sound like he's the Man of Steel. He sounds like he's got a fucking carer. The line, "Dead or alive, you are coming with me," is from the iconic 80s action film RoboCop. But you might not be aware of its less successful sequel, Robot Cop, the furniture of law enforcement. Now I know that someone has misheard that, and future and furniture sound similar to someone who doesn't speak English. But what I love on the packaging is it says, "I will be back." So the Terminator's turning up, but he's a bit more formal. Some of the most collectible toys are from Star Wars, or as we have here, Star Warsia. And if you're wondering why Yoda has a goatee, it looks like whoever made this knew there was a film from the early 80s in which a wise master was teaching a young apprentice, but wasn't sure whether it was The Empire Strikes Back or The Karate Kid, and has just combined the two. This is described as a karate farmer, wise puppets and door ladder. Also popular are first generation Transformers, the series that was set in the 1980s, where alien robots would disguise themselves mostly as vehicles in order that they would not stand out. So here is Titanic Bot. What could be more subtle than turning up as the most famous ship in history that had sunk 70 years earlier? The first ever fully CGI film was Toy Story from 1995. Let that sink in, Toy Story is 26 years old. And the original Buzz Lightyear toys, they're doing good money. Unlike this one, Boy Defamation. I have no idea how they've got that name, but deformation means to erode or distort. So in this version of the story, when Andy goes to sleep, Woody and Buzz get up and wrench his arm out of the socket. Next, this is meant to be a copy of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but has by far a superior name, Amicable Herculean. As we make our way through these truly terrible counterfeits, I think it's fair to say that whoever's made them is at least making an effort. They're using the right materials. The packaging all looks a bit worn and degraded. Now, I'm old enough to remember the first series of Thomas the Tank Engine, narrated by Ringo Starr. The stories were all fairly simple, but I don't recall the episode where all the steam trains joined together to form a massive battle robot. However, there was something dodgy going on, because it was set on the island of Sodor, a fictional island in the Irish Sea. Why would such a small island need such a massive rail network? In the 1990s, the Nintendo Game Boy and Sony PlayStation were huge. So I'm not sure what Dr. Boy is. A knockoff Game Boy, a controller for a PS1 and a handgun. Nor can I think of a scenario where you would need all three. So far, most of the toys we've looked at have been for boys, and it's okay for me to say that, because these are meant to be from the 70s to the 90s, and back then there were only two genders. If someone said they identified as a tin of custard, you didn't have to listen to their struggle, you put them in a straitjacket and locked them up. But dolls were very popular for girls. Barbie of course, and her less successful British cousin Cindy. Maybe the one we should have got was Teen Pregnancy Beautiful. There's many girls could have learned those lessons. That as soon as they start their periods, get knocked up by an unemployed waster, the council will give them a flat and they'll never work a day in their fucking life. Also popular with girls in the 1980s was My Little Pony. But whoever has made this next replica, I guess, has never heard of My Little Pony. They've just seen the object and come up with what they think it is, because this is Demon Donkey. What little girl doesn't want an equine figure possessed by a malevolent spirit? I guess there's a cord you pull on the back and it says your mother sucks cocks in hell. Just on that, 4 or 5 years ago, Mrs. Disgruntled and I went to the theatre to watch the play of The Exorcist. And in it, the actress playing Regan had a line where she said she's 10 years old. And I was thinking, I'm hoping you're not 10, love, because last week you had your tits out on Game of Thrones. And finally, another confusing one. Star Knight. Darth Vader riding a police issue Harley Davidson. What the fuck is going on? Now, if that had an authentic looking Star Wars box with the official logo, you could give that to a Star Wars fan and they'd wonder what they'd missed. All of those were terrible. But people must be buying them in order for them to keep being produced. And with that in mind, when I get home, I'm going to spray my Mini red and advertise it as a Ferrari. Thanks for watching. Of course, some of the most collectible toys were Star Wars. No, not Star Wars, that's a very specific film. Remember, the original series of Thomas the Tank Engine, which was narrated by Ringo Starr. What the fuck was I meant to say next? Also popular with girls were My Little... fucking shitty wanky bollocks. 80s, oh shut your fucking kid up. Whole video didn't fall or trip once.